In today's episode, you'll learn how to make delicious kosher reverse sear 30-day dry aged tomahawk steak using Prairie Street Prime's 30-day dry aged USDA Prime tomahawk steak and these fresh ingredients.
Let's taste it. Wow, it's really amazing. Welcome to Prairie Street Prime's Culinary Kitchen. I'm Chef Erica. I've been a chef for almost 25 years. I'm a cooking teacher, I'm a food media host, I'm a food writer. I've kind of done it all in the food world. One thing I have never done is worked with a piece of meat like this. This is Prairie Street Prime's exclusive 30-day dry-aged USDA Prime tomahawk. You cannot get better meat than this. This is your luxury meat experience. So when you have a piece of meat like this, the less you do to it, the better. You can't mess with perfection. So what I'm gonna do today with this is simply rub it down with some salt and pepper, and I'm gonna do what's called a reverse sear, which means I'm going to put it in the oven first at a fairly low temperature, 325 Fahrenheit. And I'm gonna roast it in the oven slowly until I hit an internal temperature of about 120. Then I'm gonna take it out of the oven. I'm gonna give it a good rest because we always have to let our meat rest after we cook it. And then I'll put it in a hot pan and sear it to get a beautiful crust on it. That way I'm gonna get the most even, perfect, rosy shade of pink inside with that great crust on the exterior that we all love so much in a super quality steak. To go along with it, I'm gonna make a very simple but very elegant roasted vegetable salad, and I'll put a beautiful bright green herb sauce on top of that. The salad is really simple. All I'm doing is roasting parsnips, endive, and some red seedless grapes. This is a great winter salad. So let's get started because this meat's gonna take a while in the oven. So all I'm gonna do here is give it a really nice coating of coarse kosher salt. And when we cook meat, we want it to be dry because dry meat equals crunchy brown surfaces and great flavor. So I'm being pretty generous with my kosher salt here. And then some nice ground black pepper. Pepper is simply one of salt's many friends. Sometimes salt hangs out with pepper, sometimes it doesn't. You know, they don't have to be together all the time, but pepper on red meat, that's a pretty good pairing. So there we go. Just get that all in there. Looks amazing. I'm gonna put it in a roasting pan, and I'm putting it on this little rack. That's just so I lift it up off the bottom of the pan and I get some air circulation around it so that it's not sitting on the bottom of the pan where it'll get kind of juicy and wet. This way I can maintain that dry surface area. So that's gonna go in the oven, and we'll start checking it at about 30 minutes. Now, along with putting the meat in the oven, I also put an empty sheet pan in my oven. So why did I do that? Well, I'm going to be roasting my vegetables for my salad, and one of my most famous and most favorite super chefy pro tips is that when you're roasting vegetables, preheat your pan. Whether you're doing it on a sheet tray or in a roasting pan, if you get that pan hot first, then when you put your vegetables on the pan, they're gonna start cooking like that. They'll sizzle when they hit the pan. So it's a good way to speed up the roasting process. It also makes that pan easier to clean because the vegetables aren't going to stick. So we'll be back when we check that meat in about 30 minutes. All right, let's check that meat. I think it's time. Now, the only sure bet here is to test your meat with a thermometer. Make sure you have a good quality thermometer for that meat. I already tested it. It's right around 120, and that's perfect. The perfect medium rare is 125. So why did I pull it a little bit early? Because meat does something called carryover cooking, which means it continues to cook when it comes off the heat source, so we have to factor that in. So now, this is out of the oven, I have it on a rack because I want air circulation to keep it crunchy on both sides, and I'm gonna let it rest here. The resting is to allow that carryover cooking to happen, but also it allows the juices in the meat to redistribute back throughout the muscle fiber so that later when we slice into this, all that juice stays in the meat and doesn't go on our cutting board. While that's all happening, I'm gonna get started on my vegetables and my sauce. Now remember, when this meat was in the oven, I also had that empty sheet tray in the oven, and now I'm gonna use that because that is nice and hot. And I'm gonna just set it here on my stove. You wanna remember that that's really, really hot. It's been in that oven for a long time. So we talked earlier about the salad that I'm doing with this. So I just took my endive, grapes and parsnips, and I tossed them with a little bit of olive oil, and I'm gonna season them up with just some coarse kosher salt, and maybe a little bit of black pepper on there, like that. Give that a good toss. And then what happens when I put them on that hot sheet pan is they immediately start to sear. You can actually hear that little bit of a sizzle. And what I like to do with the endive is put them cut side down, because that way I'm gonna get some nice caramelization on them. And then this will all go in the oven at about 400 degrees, and we're gonna give them about 20 to 25 minutes. We wanna get them deeply caramelized. Okay, my meat has rested, and now I'm gonna get it into my nice hot pan and give it a quick sear. This meat is so beautifully marbled, because remember, it's prime, that I don't need to put any oil in the pan. And I'm just gonna grab my big old steak here, and I'm gonna get it right in my hot pan. And we're just gonna give it a really quick sear. We wanna put a nice crust on it. Beautiful. And also, never forget about that fat cap that runs along the outside of this cut. It's so delicious, and we want it to be nice and brown. Now I'm gonna turn it so I get that fat cap along the back. Ooh, look at that. This is also something, if you have a grill, you could take it outside and finish it up on your grill too. That way you keep the smoke outside also. So one last little turn. And we're looking great. And then, of course, we're going to rest it again. Last thing we need to do before we slice into this phenomenal piece of meat is just make this really quick herb sauce. It's like a little salsa verde. And I love this one because you can make it with whatever herbs you have in your refrigerator. So I have a whole bunch of things here. I have parsley, cilantro, dill, I have some mint. You can use up all your leafy herbs. And it's a great way to use up all those herbs before they get wilty and go bad. So I'm gonna throw this big pile of herbs into my food processor. And I'm going to also add a couple of cloves of garlic and a few capers. And the capers just add like a little bit of like brininess. They're really nice, almost like a little bit of vinegar. A little bit of cumin, and I'm gonna get that kind of chopped up first, and then I'll add some lemon juice and some olive oil. Now with the machine running, I can actually pour my olive oil right in to my little spout over here. It's very convenient. So I'm gonna turn it back on and just drizzle the oil right in, like that. And then I'll add a little bit of lemon juice at the end. I like to add the lemon juice near the end so that it doesn't discolor my herbs. I'm squeezing maybe half of a lemon, about a tablespoon of lemon juice into there. Just give that a little whiz. Okay, so I'm just gonna give this a final little stir in here. That's looking good. Now let me grab that veg from the oven, because I can smell it. And usually when you smell things, it means they're done. Oh yeah, these look great. Now check out the caramelization on that. See how my parsnips are getting really golden brown and my endive is getting brown? And look at those grapes. They're sort of wrinkly and they have like a little glaze of brown on them. They look pretty great, actually. I'm gonna set this right down here because it's very hot. I don't wanna put it on my countertop. And then we're gonna get ready and slice that meat. I'm very excited about this. Okay, well, it's time. Let's slice into this spectacular piece of meat and see what we've got. Oh, people, are you ready for the big reveal? This is gonna be the moment. Look at that. That is beautiful. It slices like velvet. It's the only thing I can think of. Beautiful. I mean, you can see all that incredible marbling, all that fat. That's what makes this prime meat, is that beautiful intramuscular marbling. It's spectacular. What can I say? And you see how evenly pink, that rosy pink comes all the way through the meat. There isn't any layer of gray at the top and the bottom. That's from that reverse sear. And with a piece of meat like this, that is the way to go. Let's take 1 or 2 more slices off of this. Wow. I'm like drooling. I can't wait to taste this meat. It's amazing. Let's get a good look at that color right there. Check that out. Okay, now, let's get some vegetables on this plate. Although with meat this good, who needs vegetables? So I'm just gonna lay out a few of my pieces of my endive. And if you've never had it roasted like this, it's so nice because it's a somewhat bitter vegetable, but it gets nice and sweet when we roast it. And a few of those parsnips. Parsnips are probably my favorite winter vegetable. And then, of course, a few of my little grapes. Now let's finish this masterpiece with some of our Prairie Street Prime, USDA Prime, 30-day aged incredible beef. So I'm just gonna take a couple of pieces from right here in the middle and just drape it right over my roasted vegetables. Let's turn that around so you can really see it. And then just a little bit of this herb sauce that's just got like a nice little bit of acid in it, some salt, some garlic. So I like to do just a little drizzle of this around my veg. There we go. That looks pretty amazing. And now let's taste it. So I'm just gonna slice a little piece off of there. Wow. It's so rich and beefy, has such deep flavor. The aging adds such a complexity to it. It's really amazing.
Coming up next on the Prairie Street Prime Culinary Kitchen channel, Chef Kendra will show us how to make her delicious kosher top-of-the-rib pumpkin chili.
That is just falling apart. It's like literally melting in my mouth. Oh my gosh, it's so good.
So if you want to make this for yourself and your family, you can find the recipe and all the ingredients right down below. And remember that every Sunday we post new cooking videos with new recipes at 2 o'clock, and you should check those out. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Chef Erica, and I hope that you will try out some of our Prairie Street Prime Culinary Kitchens recipes and try some of our great meat products. Prairie Street Prime, your luxury kosher meat experience.